All right, so in this video, let's talk about the difference between perils and hazards in insurance terminology. A peril is the cause of a loss. And so, for instance, you could have like a fire or a flood or something like that causing damage to your home. Now, in insurance policies, you can have two different sort of flavors or types of policies. You can have a named peril policy or a general peril policy. So for a named peril policy, it means that the insurance policy will only cover damages or losses which result from the specifically named perils. So if it lists that wind damage is covered, then when wind damage occurs, then that's covered. But that would mean that if it only listed wind damage and that was it, and your home was damaged by a flood, it's not going to cover it. So for a named peril policy, you have to be very thoughtful about what the covered perils are. For a general peril policy, it covers perils generally. Now, in the case of a general peril policy, the thing to watch out for would be if there are any excluded perils. So sometimes policies will say, we cover perils generally, with the exception of this kind of policy, okay? So you need to be paying attention to that. Now, if perils are sort of the causes of the loss, hazards are things that increase the probability of a loss. So increase the probability of a loss. Now, there are several types of hazards. So in terms of broad classifications of hazards that would increase the probability of a loss, we have moral hazards, morale hazards, and physical hazards. Okay, so let's talk about each of those in turn. So moral hazards is basically when you have something that is causing, increases the probability of a loss to the insurance company, basically due to a moral issue. So for example, a moral issue on the part of the person who's insured. So for instance, a moral hazard associated with property insurance would be arson. You buy an insurance policy, and then you burn down your house hoping to claim insurance. Okay, so obviously that is not the purpose of an insurance policy. Arson is generally illegal. Okay, so from those kinds of things, basically that would be a moral hazard. It increases the probability of a loss, though, because unfortunately sometimes people will do things that they shouldn't do. So you could also have false claims. So people say that their car was damaged in a hailstorm when it wasn't. Okay, that increases the probability of a loss to the insurance company, and so that's a hazard. Okay. Now you can also have morale as a hazard. This is actually a hazard that is the result of changes in risky behavior due to the fact you have insurance. So for instance, let's say you have really great insurance on your car, and because you have really great insurance on your car, you decide to speed more because you figure if you get in a car accident, the insurance would pay for the damage anyway. Okay. So this would be you're embracing more risky behavior because you have insurance. Well, that increases the risk to the insurance company. They're going to have to pay out because you're doing more risky things. And this is obviously not really the point of insurance. So this is a hazard, increase the probability of a loss. One way that insurance companies typically try to address that is through deductibles. Deductibles are what the insured person has to pay when they are making a claim. So if you do get in an accident and you have a deductible on your insurance policy, you went too fast, you hit a tree. Let's say your deductible is $1,000, you're paying for the first $1,000 of damage. And one of the goals there is to dissuade people from engaging in risky behavior because they are going to bear some of the costs of that. We can also have physical hazards. So for a physical hazard that would increase the probability of a loss, let's look at the liability coverage associated with a homeowner's policy. When you buy a homeowner's insurance policy, one of the things that it typically covers is some liability coverage. So in other words, when somebody sues you due to negligence associated with your property. Let me give you an example. Let's suppose you live in an area where you get lots of ice in the winter, and so you have an icy walkway. The delivery person is walking up your steps, tries to walk up the step to deliver a package. You didn't clear off the ice. The delivery person slips all over the ice and falls and breaks a leg. okay? And then they sue you because you should have cleaned off the ice. Well, if that's the case, then we have basically that physical hazard, the icy walkway, increase the risk of the liability loss for the insurance company. And so that's a hazard. Another hazard, if you have one of those large trampolines. Large trampolines have been known to result in a pretty fair amount of injuries. People getting the great idea to try to bounce off the trampoline and try to grab onto a tree branch or something crazy, or they fall off the trampoline and break an arm. And if it's the neighbor kid who's over there and bounces right off the trampoline and breaks an arm, and then they sue you because you should have had maybe a net around the trampoline, or because they said then the trampoline you weren't supervising them well enough, or whatever. So in that case, through negligence, you have more liability risk. So this is a physical feature, physical hazard that's increasing the probability of a loss. Or if I think about home construction, some types of home construction may make more sense in earthquake-prone areas. Some types of home construction may make more sense in fire-prone areas. So for instance, if you have a home built completely of concrete, not as much risk of it burning down. So that would actually lower the probability of a loss. On the other hand, if you have a home that is built with a method that is not really suitable for an area with an earthquake, and you live in an earthquake zone, then that's going to increase the probability of a loss if an earthquake occurs. So hopefully that gives you some context for the difference between perils, which are basically the causes of losses, some policies are named peril policies, but they specify what they cover. Others are general peril policies, which they generally cover things unless they say they don't. Hazards are things that increase the probability of the loss. And we had the three types: moral, morale, and physical. Okay. So hopefully that helps to explain some of the perils and hazards that affect insurance policies. Thanks for watching and have a great day.